Hungarian Folk Tales. A fox seeks shelter. Once upon a time, there lived a wily fox. The old fox was hungry, and so he took a sack and left his home. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside the house of a rich farmer. He knocked hard on the door, and when asked who was there, he replied, "I'm a poor traveller in need of shelter for the night. Will you take pity on me?" The rich farmer had a good heart, and so did his wife. They let the fox come in and offered him supper. "Kind sir, are there no thieves around the house? I have a fine fat cockerel in my sack, and I wouldn't like to have it taken in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat cockerel has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the cockerel anywhere. The rich farmer was so ashamed that a guest of his had been robbed, and he felt sorry for the old fox as it wailed and moaned. But what could he do? He gave the fox a fine fat cockerel of his own and wished him well. So the fox left with a grateful grin on his whiskered face. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark and knocked hard on the door of a second farm. Good people lived in this house, and he was welcomed once more. As they were about to go to bed, the fox began to scour the room as if searching for thieves. "Kind sir, let me tell you that I have a fine fat goose in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." The fox waited for these fine folk to fall asleep, and he opened the sack. And what was in the sack? Why, the cockerel, of course. He took the fat fowl out and ate it all up, feathers and all. "Oh, poor me, my fine fat goose has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the goose anywhere. The farmer then gave the old fox a fine fat goose of his own to stop him crying and moaning so. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside a third house. He knocked again, was let in again, but before they went to bed, he turned to the farmer and said, "I've put my sack here under the bench, kind sir, but I can't rest in my bed because I should tell you, kind sir, that I have got a fine fat piglet in it." "You can sleep in peace, Mr. Fox," the farmer assured him. "No matter what is in your sack, there will be no trouble here." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat piglet has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the piglet anywhere. What else could the farmer do but give the fox a fine fat piglet of his own? When the sky grew dark that night, the fox knocked at another door. They let him in, and again he said the same before they went to sleep. kind sir, please look out for thieves this night, for I have a fine fat pig in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen." The farmer glanced at the sack and saw that it had no fine fat pig inside, and knew from its squeals that it was only a piglet. But the wily fox didn't go to sleep. He ate the piglet up, curly tail and all. As soon as the sun rose, the fox began to moan, "Oh, poor me, my fine fat pig has been stolen." The farmer immediately saw the trick and pretended to feel sorry for the old fox. "Don't be so sad, and don't wake the village with your moaning. I'll give you 2 fat pigs instead of 1. Give me your sack so I can put them into it outside." The master went outside with the sack. He had 2 hungry foxhounds. He put them into the fox's sack, tied it up, gave it to the fox, and wished him well. When the wily old fox opened the sack, he saw no pigs. And what should jump out of the sack but the 2 hungry foxhounds? The fox ran as fast as his red legs could carry him. He forgot about his belly and wanted to save his furry hide. But the hungry foxhounds caught hold of his tail and tore him to shreds. If they hadn't, my story would never end. Hungarian Folk Tales. King Kitty. Once upon a time, there lived a poor old woman, and she had a cat. The cat was so greedy that he poked his nose into every jug and jar. Then the day came when the old woman could not stand the cat's greedy ways any longer, and she said to him, "Get out of my house. You may go wherever you like, but never darken my door again." So the greedy cat was forced to go out into the wide world. The cat walked until he came to a bridge, where he sat and gave a sad meow. And as he sat, he caught sight of a fox sitting nearby. The cat prowled slowly around the fox and rustled the bushes. The fox was terrified, as he had never seen a cat before, and the cat was terrified because he had never seen a fox before, so they both just stood there shaking. Which of us should be in charge? What? You don't know who I am? I'm King Kitty. All the animals are afraid of me. Oh, I am ashamed to say that I have never heard of you before, the fox confessed, and immediately invited King Kitty to his humble home for a sumptuous supper of chicken, duck, goose, and anything else he could find. "Please eat more, Your Majesty. Make yourself at home." When the feast was finished, the fox prepared an exceptionally soft bed for King Kitty, who ordered complete silence while he had his royal nap. "Get away from here! Don't you know that King Kitty is sleeping in my house? If you wake him now, he's sure to have you executed." "Where are you running to? Are the hounds on your tail?" "Don't ask me, Bear. I was passing Fox's house and he told me to run away because King Kitty sleeps within, and if I woke him, he'd have me executed." the bear pondered. "I have travelled to many lands, but I have never heard of such a feline figure. I shall pay a visit to the fox and see this King Kitty for myself." "Oh, Bear, please don't go there, because if you wake King Kitty, he'll have you executed and me along with you." This frightened the bear, who ran and ran until he reached the rabbit. "Oh my, what will happen if King Kitty wakes up and walks out into the forest?" "I've got a splendid idea. Let's all invite King Kitty to a banquet." "If you trust me, I'll go to the fox and invite His Majesty." "All right, I'll go to see if King Kitty is awake, and I'll inform him of your wish." "Your Majesty, a crow has arrived sent by the animals of the forest to invite you to a royal banquet." King Kitty brushed his white whiskers and said, "Very well, you may go and tell the crow I will attend." As evening came, King Kitty began to make himself ready. He waxed his whiskers and left in the company of his host the fox. The crow met them to show the way, but the crow was too scared to fly down to the ground, and so instead he flew from tree to tree and called, "This way, please, this way, please." The other animals soon sighted King Kitty arriving with the fox. "Oh dearie me, here comes King Kitty, he'll skewer me on his spiky whiskers." But all of a sudden the animals took fright and fled to all four corners of the forest. And if these foolish animals had not run away, my story would have lasted longer still. Hungarian Folk Tales. Only donkeys don't eat the spoon. Once upon a time, beyond the snowy Alps, in the cradle of the Carpathian Mountains, lay the land of Hungary, and there lived a king called Matthias. If the old stories are to be believed, then King Matthias liked to see for himself how his people lived. He dressed in the clothes of a simple beggar and wandered the land, where he spoke to his people as their equal. One day he found himself on a vast plain, where all he could see was the small house of a shepherd. So King Matthias approached the house and greeted the good shepherd. It was the middle of winter, so the shepherd invited the king into his home. The shepherd had no idea that this poor beggar was actually the king of the land. He gave him food for his journey, and the king carved his host's name on his stick before he returned to his royal palace. The shepherd had a trusty black sheepdog. The little dog was so skilled and loyal that it never left the shepherd's feet. King Matthias sent a letter to the shepherd inviting him and his trusty sheepdog to the palace. But the invitation did not explain why he was invited or how to find the king's home. So the shepherd made himself look smart, took his crook in his hand, and set off for the king's royal palace, with his sheepdog by his side. When they reached the city gate, they were met by a guard who said, "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "And with a dog?" "But of course," the shepherd replied. "Here you are. You can see the royal letter that invites us both." The guard read the letter from top to bottom. "Oh, old man, you are sure to be richly rewarded by the king. I shall let you pass if you promise to share the great reward with me." "Well, I don't mind. I promise you that half of the reward will be yours." Then the shepherd reached the castle gate. He tried to enter, but was again stopped by a guard. "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "With a dog?" "Well, I have a letter. Here you are." "You were right. You were both invited." But then the guard remembered that there was a banquet inside the palace. The king had called together all the important men in his kingdom. The king obviously wanted to reward the lowly shepherd in front of these rich men, but also planned to play a joke on the old man first. The second guard said, "Old man, you are going to get a great reward. I shall let you pass if you give me half of that reward." "All right, I will give you half of it." So he would give one half to this one, and he had promised to give the other half to the other one, so that would leave him with nothing, wouldn't it? The old shepherd walked into the palace. The king and his courtiers were already seated around the large table. The servants had set places for them all with a bowl, spoon, knife and a fork in front of everyone except the shepherd, who had been given no spoon. The soup was served and everyone helped himself. The first, of course, was His Majesty King Matthias, who raised his spoon and said, "Dear sirs, only donkeys don't eat soup." Everyone took his spoon. The shepherd tried to take his one too, but he had none. "Oh dear, I shall be the donkey now because I cannot eat my soup. I cannot eat soup with either a fork or a knife." But this was not the first time that a poor man had to eat soup without a spoon. The old shepherd simply cut the end off his bread and hollowed it out. The crispy crust made the perfect spoon for eating soup, and he sat and ate every last drop, watched by all the important guests and the king. "Your Majesty said that only donkeys don't eat soup. Well, let me add that only donkeys don't eat their spoon." And the old shepherd gobbled up his soup-soaked spoon in one. The banquet eventually ended and the time came for the king to hand out rewards. And you will never believe what the old shepherd asked for. "Your Majesty, I would like 50 strokes of the stick." "Shepherd, I haven't invited you to beat you 50 times with a stick. I wanted to play a practical joke on you, but you played the joke on me. Therefore, you deserve more than 50 strokes. Tell me now what I owe you." "Your Majesty, you owe me nothing more than 50 strokes. That's all I want." Then the king understood that it had been a joke again. "Very well then, but tell me now why." "Why? The reason is very simple. On my way here I was stopped by a guard at the city gate who refused to let me in unless he could share half of my reward. Then a second guard only let me enter the palace if he too could receive half of my reward. So now one will receive 25 strokes of the stick, and so will the second." And so the shepherd's joke was ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pussycat Princess. Once upon a time, there lived a king, and the king had 3 sons. All 3 princes were of marrying age, and so their father told them to find themselves wives. He threw 3 sticks in the air, one for each son, and said, "Wherever your stick falls is where you find your bride." The eldest son's stick fell towards a young baroness. The middle son's stick fell towards a young countess, while the youngest son's stick fell towards the dark forest. The young men all left the palace, but the youngest one was very sad. He had no idea how he would find a bride in the thick forest. And as he was walking in the forest, he met a small pussycat that walked behind him. The young prince spoke to the pussycat and said, "My royal father told me to travel to these parts where I would find my bride, but I can't see a girl anywhere near. Don't worry, I will marry you." The prince could not return home until he promised to marry the pussycat. The other princes had already arrived back, and their father asked them each what they thought of their bride. The eldest one said that he found a baroness, and the middle son said that he found a countess, while the youngest one asked them to wait and see. Then the king ordered all the 3 grooms to fetch a beautiful bouquet from their beloved. The 2 elder ones went happily, but the youngest one was very sad. When he reached the edge of the forest, the pussycat was already waiting for him. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to bring a bouquet from our fiancés? Now what could I bring from a pussycat?" "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." Then the pussycat scratched a tree and many more pussycats appeared. One of them brought silver flowers, another golden flowers, and a third brought diamond flowers, and the bride arranged them all in a beautiful bouquet. The other 2 princes were already at home when the young prince arrived late. The king said that the bouquets were truly beautiful, but the most beautiful of all belonged to the youngest son. They all asked him to tell the name of his bride-to-be, but he asked them to wait and see. Days passed and soon became a week, when the king ordered his sons to go to their brides and fetch a handkerchief each. The young princes all left, but the youngest one was very sad. By the time he reached the edge of the forest, the pussycat was already waiting for him. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to bring a handkerchief from our fiancés, but a pussycat cannot weave." "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." The pussycat scratched the tree, and once again more pussycats appeared. One brought silver yarn, another brought golden yarn, and a third gave diamond yarn, and the pussycat bride wove them together. When he arrived at the palace, the king inspected all 3 handkerchiefs. He told the eldest boys that theirs were quite pretty, but he told the youngest son that his was the prettiest of all. Weeks passed and soon became a month, when the king told his sons to bring their fiancés to the palace. The 2 elder boys went happily for their spouses, while the youngest one became sadder than ever before. How could he possibly take the pussycat home? His pussycat bride was already waiting for him at the edge of the forest. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to fetch our brides? Now how can I present a pussycat at the palace? Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest. The youngest prince thought he would never sleep, but at last he succumbed and fell into a slumber. When he awoke, he was very worried, but the young princess told him it was she in the guise of a pussycat whom he had betrothed, but she had been under a curse to live like that until a young man asked for her hand in marriage. I was a pussycat, and you asked me to marry you, so I turned back into a princess. A wonderful coach awaited them, with proud coachmen and fine horses, so the prince sat in the carriage with his princess and travelled back to the palace in regal style. The wedding party was already underway at the palace when the guards came to the king and told him that a king had arrived from another country. When the young couple arrived, the king soon saw that they were his son and his beautiful bride. They were all amazed to discover that the youngest prince's bride was the most beautiful of them all. Then they all sang and danced and danced and sang until the wedding party was done. And this is where my story ends. Hungarian Folk Tales. Green Peter. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there stood a large farm. A family lived on that farm with a husband, a wife, a son, and a daughter. When his wife died, the husband married again so that there should be someone to bring up the children. But the new wife did not like the children, and she put poison in their food. When the children sat down to eat their supper, a white dove flew down and said, "Children, don't eat the soup because it's poisoned. Run away from home and never look back." The boy and his young sister walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, Green Peter, come here." It was a poor little fish cast ashore by the sea. "Pick me up, Green Peter, throw me back into the water, do good and you will prosper." So the boy happily helped the little fish. They walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, Green Peter, come here." This time it was a little bird that had lost its flock. The bird begged the boy, "Green Peter, please put me on the branch so that I can fly on with my bird brothers." Green Peter put it up on the branch, and the little bird said to him, "Thank you, do good, and you will prosper." They walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, come here." A poor shriveled rosebush was calling. It begged the boy to water its roots. "Well, Green Peter," the rosebush said, "do good and you will prosper." Green Peter and his sister walked until they came to the town. When he reached the gate, the people called out to him, "Come in, Green Peter, come in, because there are already 99 heads on stakes and yours will be the 100th one." Even though Green Peter was afraid, he went in all the same. And he was told that the princess would marry the first man who could hide himself so well that she would never find him. So Green Peter went in and was ordered to hide himself 3 mornings running, because otherwise he would be beheaded. But if the princess failed to find him, she and half the kingdom would be his. Poor Peter wept and wept and said to himself, "I've just managed to get away from my evil stepmother, and look what trouble I'm in again. Where could I possibly hide?" Suddenly the little fish appeared. "Why are you crying, Green Peter?" "Because the king said that unless I can hide from his daughter, he will have me beheaded." The fish opened its mouth and said, "Hide in here, Green Peter." So Green Peter slipped into the fish's mouth and it swam to the bottom of the deep sea, where it hid itself in the sand. The young princess stepped out into the corridor. She rubbed her eyes and said, "Come out, Green Peter, from the mouth of the fish, from the sand at the bottom of the sea." So Green Peter came out. He crawled sadly out of the mouth of the fish and went to the royal palace. The next morning he tried again. "Where, oh where shall I hide?" Suddenly the little bird flew down and said to him, "Why are you crying, Green Peter?" "Why indeed, if I don't manage to hide from the princess, I'll be beheaded." The little bird spread its wings and said, "Come on, hide beneath my wings," and it flew up behind the back of the sun. When the princess came out to the corridor, she rubbed her eyes and caught sight of him at once. "Green Peter, come out from behind the back of the sun, from beneath the bird's wings." The bird flew down to the ground and let Green Peter slip out from under its wings. Green Peter went sadly back, and next morning he again set out. But by now he was crying more than ever before. "Oh, oh, oh, what will become of me?" The rosebush came up to him and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to hide you." They went before the royal palace and stopped right in front of the corridor. The rosebush sat down and said, "Hide among my leaves and thorns," and it opened up so that it became more radiant than the sun itself. The princess came out. She rubbed her eyes, but she couldn't see Green Peter anywhere. "Rub your eyes again, my girl," said the king. "Or would you prefer to marry?" Again the princess rubbed her eyes. She looked and looked, but to no avail. She eventually grew tired of looking for the lad and called out to him, "Come out, Green Peter, come out from wherever you are. I can't see you anywhere." And so Green Peter came out at last. The young couple married right away. He got half the kingdom too, and the wedding feast lasted for 3 long days. I was there myself, and I had a fine time. I was even given a nice big bone to chew.